up, everybody? It's your boy, the Kryptonian, saying here, bringing you a review for One Piece Chapter 621. And boy, was this a good chapter. Boy, was this a good chapter. So, completely wrong. Otohime was not human. She's a goldfish mermaid. Goldfish mermaid. And at first, I almost slipped up. I saw the legs and everything. I was like, oh, well, nah, that's not the case. It's not the case. So, I like how what you see is she's clearly a different cut. Different cut. And one of the things she does is she uses her observation haki. And what's really interesting about all this is she's breaking ground, okay? Breaking ground. Instead of just being a royal who looks down on people, or someone very wealthy who looks down on people who are less well off than them, like Sabo's family, she's actually interacting with the poor people. And she has this one moment where she gets this shopkeeper who reminds me of Jean Valjean from Les Miserables, which is a very good play. I highly recommend checking it out. It's got a very deep story. Just like with One Piece, the morality issues in that is gonna grab your attention. There's even a movie on it if you can deal with the musical, like the singing and everything. But what's really interesting is like that shopkeeper reminds me of Jean Valjean. In Les Miserables, you know, he is put in jail for stealing a loaf of bread for his family because resources are tight, very poor, had to feed his daughter, okay? And because he gets this cop that is all about justice and all this other shit, he ends up, you know, being put in prison. But it's the same thing. But in this case, Otohime is looking at him. She says, like, look, how could you bear to give your children the shame of raising them with stolen money? And it's kind of like how in America you have like the American dream, a house, a picket fence, kids, the dog. That's the American dream, right? And yet at the same time, when some people started off, you know, less than others, like in this case, some people resort to different measures to try and get their own slice of the American dream. And you just got, she spoke some real words, this queen. She says, you can't raise your kids off the shame. You're putting a bad example for them, because sooner or later they're going to look at you, and I'm paraphrasing now, but sooner or later they're going to look at you and they're going to wonder, how did their father get this stuff when their father is not super well off, or when you steal, it's just one thing after another, you're setting a bad example. So I like that. And I also like how she is doing what I was just talking about in the last chapter review, man, where, you know, she says, like, hey, like, just because the humans up there, their skin is of a different color than ours, we still have to talk, you know, we have to see past this violence and this fear. Yes, we've dealt with the pirate kind, but we've also dealt with the aristocrat kind. And there are more humans. We don't know much about them. We have to move everything from being 30,000 feet under the sea because we're separating ourselves. And you got characters like Jinbe who are looking and they don't fully agree, but he's being the good soldier. He's just kind of rolling with it. And she says at the Reverie, and so this is the second time Reverie's been brought up. So now I'm interested just what the fuck is Reverie in One Piece now. But, and this, she says, like, well, with the Reverie, it's being held, and I'm gonna say that we wanna make good relations with the humans. And she says there's more to it than that, and that struck a real big chord with me, because I can say that since like we had like the Ferguson riots, and you see like all these like black men for right or for wrong being shot down, one of the things that I've had to endure is, you know, just sideways glances, because sometimes people might say like might look and you can tell they're thinking, does he hate white people? Is he part of Black Lives Matter? Is he a criminal? And it's the type shit that you dealt with in the 90s. I was too young, but I know from some of my cousins, like, it's just like, you know, the way you were portrayed in the media and everything, some people thought, hey, if you're black, you're a drug dealer, or if you have some nice stuff, you probably are like an athlete or like the friend of an athlete. Just stupid misconceptions. Not in every part of the country, but I mean, particularly down south, that was that was a huge thing. And so I I kind of understand it, and I like how she's saying there are different people. There are different people. You know, like I notice little sideways glances when I go out, and I mean, you know, when you catch me, like you're more likely to catch me in a cardigan or a button down or something like that. Like I don't do the whole hip hop look. You know, like a lot of my friends, like they, you know, make the joke. They say, "Oh, look at you, you on that pretty boy shit," and even I notice when I go out and just little sideways looks, and you pick up on it. You pick up on it, and it didn't really start to tick until the racial tension that we have now, especially now what just happened a few weeks ago in I think Charlottesville, where you had like the uh, where you had the you know, protests and the beatings and shit that was taking place on there, where you saw like some black people getting beat down and protesters getting run over and shit, and you had hate groups descending into Charlottesville, tainting the whole reason why the people even there to begin with, and you got all this shit. I mean, it's crazy. But what gets lost is the media wants to push this narrative, and they don't. And I'm gonna get back to the chapter where I'm tying it in with this, so just sit with me. But they're not pushing the whole thing of we need to have a discussion. And that's exactly what the queen is doing. She says, like, we need to end this shit now. Some of you don't like humans. Not all humans are bad. We owe it to ourselves to see where that common ground is and to see what foundation we can build on. So I like this. And, you know, this is Oda, again, tackling heavy shit. Tackling really heavy shit. And depending on the age of the person that is reading this or watching this, when they get this part in the story, it might go over their head or they might get bored because they're not getting that action that they want. And I like how when you get this one character, Tiger, when he shows up, it goes from all along in Jinbe butting heads. So all of a sudden they say Big Brother Tiger, and then you find out that Tiger assaulted the celestial dragons, and that's the language that's used in the chapter. So, he assaulted the celestial dragons, raided the place, freed the slaves, and we know Boa Hancock was one of those slaves. And I like how when after he shows up, all the Sun Pirates, they join together and they say, well, you know what? Those slaves have this mark, so we're all going to get this mark. That way we can't they can't distinguish the difference between us. It's a sign of unity, and it's the same thing of what the queen was trying to push for with the humans. Because at the end of the day, you all want the same things, and yet because of what Jinbe said, you know, even though you had the fishmen being recognized, being part of the revelry and everything, they are still seen for the most part as fish, and she's trying to break through that narrative, and I like that. I really like that. And then on the flip side, because they're doing the whole thing with the slaves, it's the same thing. And I like how one of the things, I think it was Jinbe who said it. I want to read the exact quote because it's very powerful what he says. He says at the very end, he says, it's legal to own slaves, but freeing them is a crime. How can you still tell us to love humans? Queen Otohime. And the chapter ends with Oda saying that the onslaught continues. And it goes back to what I've been saying for a while. People are held captive to their experiences. And sometimes when you go through certain things, like for instance with me, with the times I've been racially discriminated against, where like when I'm on a road trip to St. Louis and I stop for food, and I literally have my food not brought out. Like my food never got brought out. Girls' food got brought out, fine, cooked, everything. And because like my mom does the catering and does the event planning and all this other stuff, I understand sometimes food can get you know, overcooked or undercooked, and it takes time to get done. All I want was a fucking burger. And because I worked in retail for a period, like I try to be understanding and all this stuff. Like when she gets her food and is able to finish it and then get dessert and then my shit doesn't come out, and everybody else around me has gotten burgers, and some people have gotten fucking steaks and everything, my food still didn't get brought out. I could just as easily say, okay, I hate every fucker in the South. I hate every white person in the South. But that's not the case, because I understand not everybody's like that. I understand not everybody's like that. And whatever happened, you felt that hatred in your heart for whatever reason. For whatever reason. And because I also, with my mom, with her thing, like, my mom doesn't do this, but some of the people that she employs used to work in, you know, the food industry. So I do know that food gets fucked with. So yeah, I still tip the 20% like I do when I go sit somewhere, and, you know, said thank you for your service. And I did make a complaint to the manager, but I still tipped. You can stand up for yourself, much like how the Queen was standing up for herself, saying I need those signatures. And yet at the same time, you have to understand, you can't do what Jinbi was doing. So I like what Oda's doing here. So my chapter question to you guys is, knowing the outcome of this, knowing that Fishman and Fishman and humans that never really going to reconcile, at least not until the point of the story we got now, I have two questions for you. What were your thoughts about what got us to this point? And when you got to this point in the story, are you thinking like I'm thinking, that maybe Luffy can be that buffer? And also, one final thing, and one observation I had too. How the fuck did she push out the princess? Because the princess is a big bitch, man. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. Have an awesome